So good morning. 500,000 of us are due to travel to or through France this weekend, with millions more planning to go over the summer. But if you're one of them, your plans will be in chaos now, thanks to a last-minute government rule change, because they're keeping quarantine for France despite it being on the amber list.
For all amber list countries, you won't have to quarantine from Monday if you're double jabbed or you're under 18. That gave lots of people the confidence to book a trip. Cases are much lower in France than they are in the UK, but the UK government is worried about the beta variant of COVID-19, which is more prevalent in France and thought to be more resistant to the vaccine.
Well, France is our second most popular holiday destination. 9 million of us went there in 2019.
And so the rules change. Well, to discuss the government's latest rules, we're joined now by GBNews' Anaya. Anaya, a very good morning to you. This is a massive headache now for all those people who are planning maybe to depart today to go to France. Why do you think the government left it to this moment to make the change?
Good morning. Well, I think there seems to me at least to be two particular things going on here. On the one hand as well, I think after a few weeks ago when we had that announcement in terms of what's going to happen in relation to so-called Freedom Day, that operative word at that time, irreversible, seems to be something the government is implicitly and explicitly backtracking on. We've seen it on masks, and we've seen it on the pressure that has been subtly waded onto individuals and companies to maintain various different types of COVID restrictions. So it seems to me that this is a signal and an indication that a lot of the things that we thought were going to be irreversible are likely to not be over the coming months. And the second thing is, I think a lot of pressure and backlash was given to the government several months ago when they didn't act fast enough, it was argued, in relation to borders, in relation to the Indian variant, the Delta variant. And so I think that this is the government wanting to demonstrate that actually when it comes to the possibility of different variants emerging across the world, then it is going to act fast. And I think that that is understandable. The Delta variant did cause a lot of damage in the country. It quickly became one of the majority variants that were spreading within the United Kingdom. And so this other variant that we are seeing in France, which is actually now 3.4% of cases in France, and we do know obviously with regards to exponential growth in relation to the COVID-19 and variants, that can actually make a big difference. And it is thought quite by many scientists that this particular variant that is spreading in France may not be as effective for the vaccination program. So after we've got so far, I think that when it comes to things outside of the country, such as holidays and quarantining, that this is one of the types of things that can be done in order to prevent our program from going backwards.
Anaya, good morning. I mean, these constant changes, people waking up this morning, they've booked maybe to go to France or to go wherever, the Balearic Islands we'll talk about in a minute, a nightmare there as well. I mean, it's a nightmare for the travel industry, not to mention those people that have booked. Why is there so much inconsistency?
Well, I think that it's totally understandable why people will be frustrated, and the travel industry, similar to other industries such as hospitality, have been hit the hardest and decimated during this pandemic. And I don't think that the government has necessarily provided enough support for some of these industries that do form a lifeblood to our economy and also social life. But the reality is we are still in a pandemic, and what that often means, what that does mean, is that whilst other countries are still dealing with a lot of cases, hospitalizations and deaths and new variants, that does mean that that could potentially affect the UK as well. And I think it has been widely known that if other countries are not progressing when it comes to lifting restrictions and moving forward, then that does consequently blow back on the United Kingdom as well. And so we do have to be cautious when it comes to travelling, because I do think there is a high possibility that restrictions on travel when it comes to quarantine may come back again. So I think that travel and holiday makers do have to reflect on that when they're making decisions. But obviously, this is a country that we assumed only a few weeks ago, based off of Boris Johnson's words, that this would be totally fine, you wouldn't need to quarantine. So that frustration is absolutely understandable, I think.
Anaya, why there's this frustration about France, there's also going on this weekend this sort of scramble back from Ibiza, Mallorca. You know, why did they move back from green, and how much time do those people have left to come back to have to avoid the quarantine?
Well, this is just another understandable thing that you've mentioned about the frustration. I think that the government has to be completely clear to people. This was one of the problems that we saw months ago, and we're seeing the same thing now. And a lot of the promises about opening up, about Freedom Day, are quietly, seemingly to be backtracked. And even now we have a new health secretary, Sajid Javid, which indicated that we were going to see a different tack to the seemingly cautious and hawkish approach of Matt Hancock, and we are again seeing these similar things. And so I think that people need to make sure, before they're taking any of those decisions, to be really, really aware, be really, really cautious, because the likelihood of some of these restrictions changing seems to increasingly be going up again, unfortunately.
Anaya, thank you very much for talking us through some of the rule change and the reasons why, if you have just joined us. So